1. The forgotten foundation. You have been conditioned to believe that discipline is punishment, that resistance creates strength, and that forcing yourself through discomfort builds character. This is the first lie you must abandon. True discipline flows like water, finding its course down a mountainside. Water does not fight the mountain, yet over time, it carves the deepest canyons. The mountain seems immovable, permanent, stronger. Yet water persists with gentle, consistent pressure and eventually shapes the very foundation of stone. What if everything you learned about willpower was backwards? The Stoics of ancient Rome and Greece understood something that modern people have forgotten in their rush toward instant gratification. They discovered that genuine self-discipline is not about forcing yourself to do what you hate. It is about becoming the type of person who naturally chooses what serves your highest vision. Consider how a seed transforms into a mighty oak. The seed does not struggle against its nature to become something else. It surrenders completely to what it is designed to become. Through seasons of growth, storms of challenge, and cycles of rest, the oak emerges not through force, but through alignment with its essential nature. You are not broken and in need of fixing. You are not weak and in need of strengthening. You are perfectly designed to grow into the fullest expression of who you came here to be. Self-discipline is simply the practice of removing everything that prevents this natural unfolding. The conditioned mind believes discipline means saying no to what you want and yes to what you should do. This creates an internal war between desire and duty, pleasure and responsibility, freedom and structure. The awakened mind understands that true discipline means aligning your daily choices with your deepest values until there is no conflict between what you want and what serves you. When you operate from conditioned consciousness, you rely on motivation that comes and goes like weather. Some days you feel inspired to pursue your goals. Other days you feel resistance. You depend on external circumstances to determine your internal state. You wait for the right mood, the right moment, the right feeling to take action. When you operate from awakened consciousness, your actions flow from identity rather than emotion. You do what you do because of who you are, not because of how you feel. The person who has claimed the identity of someone who honors their word keeps their commitments regardless of their momentary desires. The person who identifies as someone who respects their body makes nourishing choices whether they feel like it or not. What identity would you need to claim for your desired life to become inevitable rather than effortful? This shift from effort-based discipline to identity-based discipline changes everything. Instead of asking, "How can I force myself to do this?" you begin asking, "Who would I need to become for this to feel natural?" The ancient Stoics called this preferred indifference. They recognized that while you cannot control outcomes, you can completely control your responses to circumstances. Your discipline becomes a practice of choosing your response rather than controlling your results. Every moment offers you the choice between the person you have been and the person you are becoming. The person you have been operates from familiar patterns, unconscious habits, and conditioned responses. The person you are becoming operates from conscious choice, clear intention, and aligned action. The gap between these two versions of yourself is where all transformation happens. This gap is not a problem to be solved, but a space to be honored. Like the silence between musical notes that creates the melody, this space between who you were and who you are becoming is where your life's greatest symphony emerges. You close this gap not through force, but through practice. Each time you choose the response that aligns with who you are becoming, rather than who you have been, you strengthen that emerging identity. Each aligned choice becomes easier than the last. Because you are not fighting against yourself, you are supporting your natural evolution. This is why most approaches to self-discipline fail. They try to change behavior without changing identity. They focus on doing different things rather than becoming a different person. But behavior that conflicts with identity will never be sustainable. You will always return to acting in harmony with who you believe yourself to be. What would change in your daily life if you fully believed you were already the type of person you wish to become? The Stoics understood that the only true freedom comes through voluntary constraint. By choosing your limitations consciously, you avoid having limitations imposed upon you unconsciously. By disciplining your attention, you avoid being controlled by distraction. By disciplining your responses, you avoid being controlled by circumstances. By disciplining your choices, you avoid being controlled by impulses. This is not restriction, this is liberation. When you no longer need external conditions to be perfect before you can feel peace, you become unshakable. When you no longer need others to behave in certain ways before you can feel love, you become unlimited. When you no longer need specific outcomes before you can feel successful, you become truly free. The path of self-discipline is ultimately a path of self-trust. Each time you keep a promise to yourself, you strengthen your relationship with the most important person in your life, you. Each time you honor your commitments, regardless of your feelings, you build evidence that you are reliable. Each time you choose your highest values over your momentary impulses, you prove that you can be trusted with greater opportunities. Your entire life experience flows from the quality of relationship you have with yourself. Everything you desire, love, success, peace, purpose, abundance, comes through this relationship. Self-discipline is not about controlling yourself. It is about loving yourself enough to make choices that honor your highest potential. If you could trust yourself completely to choose what truly serves your growth and happiness, what would become possible in your life that currently feels impossible? 2. The discipline of attention. Where you place your mind determines your reality. You have been given one supreme power that shapes every moment of your existence, yet most people surrender this gift without ever recognizing its value. This power is your attention. Where you consistently place your attention becomes your reality. Not tomorrow, not next year, but right now. Your attention is the sculptor's chisel, constantly carving the statue of your life from the raw marble of possibility. Consider the mighty river that carved the deepest canyons on Earth. Drop by drop, the water followed its course with unwavering persistence. It did not scatter its force across the entire mountainside. It focused its power along one precise path, and through this discipline of direction, it transformed solid rock into magnificent valleys. Your attention works with the same principle. When scattered, it creates shallow impressions that fade quickly. When focused with disciplined intention, it carves new realities from the bedrock of circumstance. Most people live as prisoners of their own wandering minds. They allow their attention to be pulled by every passing thought, every external distraction, every emotional fluctuation. They wonder why their lives feel chaotic, why their dreams remain distant, why their relationships lack depth. What determines where you place your attention right now? The conditioned mind operates like a wild horse, running toward whatever stimulus appears strongest in the all moment. It chases fears, replays old hurts, anticipates future problems, and seeks constant entertainment. This scattered approach to attention creates a scattered life. The awakened mind recognizes that attention is choice, and choice is freedom. You become the rider who guides the horse with gentle but firm direction. You decide what deserves the precious resource of your mental energy. When you love someone deeply, you give them your attention freely. When you master a skill, you focus your attention consistently on practice. When you build wealth, you direct your attention toward value creation. When you cultivate inner peace, you place your attention on the present moment rather than the stories your mind creates about past and future. This is the ancient discipline the Stoics understood. You cannot control what happens around you, but you have absolute dominion over where you place your attention. This dominion is your pathway to every form of mastery. The practice begins with awareness. Throughout your day, pause and ask yourself, where is my attention right now? Is it serving my highest good, or have I unconsciously surrendered it to forces that diminish my power? When you catch your attention wandering toward worry, gently guide it back to what you can control in this moment. When you notice it fixating on past regrets, redirect it toward present opportunities. When it gets lost in future anxieties, return it to the breath, to the task at hand, to the person before you. How would your relationships change if you gave them your complete attention when you were together? The quality of your attention determines the quality of your experience. Half-hearted attention creates half-hearted results. When you eat while watching screens, you taste nothing. When you listen while planning your response, you hear nothing. When you work while thinking about leisure, you accomplish nothing of significance. But when you bring your full attention to any activity, that activity becomes a gateway to mastery. The cook who attends fully to each ingredient creates meals that nourish the soul. The parent who offers complete presence raises children who feel truly seen. The student who focuses entirely on learning absorbs wisdom that transforms their understanding. You discover that you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that observes thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are the consciousness that experiences emotions. You are not your circumstances. You are the being who chooses how to respond to circumstances. This recognition changes everything. Instead of being tossed about by every mental and emotional wave, you become the steady lighthouse that shines its beam wherever you choose to direct it. The conditioned person says, "I can't help what I think about." The awakened person understands, "I may not control what thoughts arise, but I absolutely control which thoughts I feed with my attention." The thoughts and feelings you consistently attend to grow stronger. The ones you refuse to feed gradually weaken. This is how you reprogram your entire inner world through the simple but profound practice of disciplined attention. What would become possible in your life if you directed your attention with the same precision a master archer aims at the target? Your attention is your vote for what kind of reality you want to experience. Every moment, you are voting. Cast enough votes in one direction, and you elect a new life. Continue voting unconsciously, and you remain trapped in patterns that no longer serve you. The practice is not about perfection. Your mind will wander. This is natural. The discipline lies in noticing when it wanders and gently bringing it back to your chosen focus. Each time you do this, you strengthen your capacity for directed attention. Start small. Choose one daily activity and commit to giving it your complete attention. Whether washing dishes, walking, or having a conversation, be fully present to that experience. Notice how this simple shift transforms something ordinary into something rich with meaning. As you develop this discipline, you begin to understand why the ancient Stoics spoke of attention as the foundation of all virtue. Courage requires attending to what truly matters rather than what merely appears urgent. Wisdom develops by focusing on eternal principles rather than temporary circumstances. Justice emerges when you attend to the well-being of others alongside your own. Your life becomes the masterpiece you were always capable of creating, not through forcing external circumstances to bend to your will, but through the patient, persistent discipline of directing your attention toward what serves your highest vision of who you are becoming. The sculptor does not blame the marble for being hard. He simply continues to place his chisel precisely where he intends the next cut. Your attention is your chisel, your life is your marble, and every moment offers you another opportunity to create something beautiful. If you could direct your attention with unwavering focus toward what matters most to you, who would you become in the process? The choice point. Where freedom lives. You stand at a crossroads every moment of your life, though most people never realize it. Between every impulse and action, between every thought and response, between every emotion and behavior, lies a sacred space. This space is where your true power lives. This space is where discipline transforms from burden into liberation. The ancient Stoics called this space prohairesis, the faculty of choice. You possess something that no external force can touch, no circumstance can control, no person can manipulate. You possess the ability to choose your response to whatever life presents. Yet, how often do you actually exercise this power? How often do you pause in that sacred space between stimulus and response? Consider the mighty oak that has weathered countless storms. When fierce winds assault its branches, the oak does not resist by becoming rigid. Instead, it bends without breaking, choosing flexibility over brittleness. The oak's strength lies not in avoiding the storm, but in how it responds to each gust. You, like the oak, cannot control the storms of life, but you can master your response to them. Most people live as prisoners of their automatic reactions. They believe they are their emotions, their impulses, their conditioning. When anger arises, they become anger. When fear emerges, they become fear. When desire appears, they become desire. They have forgotten the fundamental truth that you are not your reactions. You are the one who chooses how to respond to them. This forgetting creates a life of unconscious servitude. The conditioned mind reacts to criticism with defensiveness, to setbacks with despair, to temptation with immediate gratification. It believes happiness comes from getting what it wants and avoiding what it doesn't want. It lives at the mercy of circumstances, riding an endless roller coaster of emotional highs and lows. The awakened consciousness recognizes something profound. Between every stimulus and response lies infinite possibility. When criticism comes, you can choose curiosity over defensiveness. When setbacks occur, you can choose learning over despair. When temptation appears, you can choose alignment with your deeper values over momentary pleasure. This is not about suppressing your emotions or denying your impulses. This is about reclaiming your rightful position as the conscious director of your life, rather than the unconscious victim of your reactions. What would change in your life if you truly understood that you always have a choice? The untrained mind believes that external circumstances determine internal states. It thinks, "She made me angry," or "This situation is ruining my day," or "I can't help myself." This is the language of powerlessness, the vocabulary of victims. But you are not a victim of your circumstances. You are the architect of your responses. Every moment offers you the opportunity to practice this ancient art of conscious choosing. When someone cuts you off in traffic, you can choose patience over rage. When unexpected bills arrive, you can choose creative problem-solving over panic. When loved ones disappoint you, you can choose understanding over resentment. These daily moments of choice are your training ground for larger challenges. Like a musician practicing scales to master complex compositions, you develop the strength of conscious choice through small, consistent decisions. Each time you pause before reacting, each time you choose your response deliberately, you strengthen the muscle of discipline. But this practice requires you to develop a new relationship with discomfort. The conditioned mind seeks to avoid all unpleasant feelings, to escape from difficult emotions, to find the quickest route away from pain. This avoidance actually creates more suffering by keeping you trapped in unconscious patterns. The awakened consciousness understands that discomfort is not your enemy. It is your teacher. When you feel the urge to check your phone instead of focusing on important work, that discomfort is pointing you toward growth. When you want to avoid a difficult conversation, that resistance is showing you where courage is needed. When you feel tempted to break a commitment to yourself, that tension is offering you an opportunity to strengthen your integrity. What if you began to welcome discomfort as a sign that you are moving in the right direction? The river that carves the deepest canyons does not force its way through rock with violence. Instead, it applies consistent, gentle pressure over time, allowing the natural principles of flow and persistence to create magnificent formations. Your discipline works the same way. You do not need to force yourself into perfect behavior overnight. You need to apply consistent conscious choice over time, allowing the natural principles of growth and development to transform your life. This understanding liberates you from the exhausting cycle of trying to control outcomes. You cannot control whether others appreciate your efforts, whether your investments grow, whether your health remains perfect, or whether your plans unfold as expected. But you can control how you show up to each situation. You can control the quality of attention you bring. You can control the values you embody in your choices. When you shift your focus from controlling outcomes to mastering responses, something remarkable happens. You discover that you already possess everything you need to create a life of meaning, purpose, and genuine fulfillment. The power was never outside you. It was always within you, waiting to be recognized and exercised. The person who masters this choice point becomes truly free, not free from challenges, but free to meet challenges with wisdom, not free from emotions, but free to respond to emotions with consciousness, not free from desires, but free to align desires with deeper values. You are not at the mercy of your conditioning. You are not a victim of your circumstances. You are not powerless over your responses. You are the conscious creator of your character, the deliberate architect of your reactions, the mindful author of your daily choices. In this very moment, between reading these words and whatever you do next, lies your choice point. What will you choose? 4. The discipline of choice. Every moment of your life, you stand at a crossroads. Before you stretch two paths, one worn smooth by countless feet seeking comfort, the other less traveled, marked by those who understood that discipline is not restriction, but the highest form of freedom. The path you choose in this instant determines not just your next step, but the very person you become. You are not a victim of circumstance. You are not at the mercy of your emotions, your past, or, your present conditions. You are the architect of your destiny, wielding the most powerful tool ever placed in human hands, the power of conscious choice. Consider the mighty oak that stands tall against winter storms. When fierce winds howl and lesser trees bend until they break, the oak endures. But its strength did not appear overnight. Each year, through countless small choices, to reach deeper into the earth, to extend its roots further, to grow thicker rings of heartwood, the oak prepared for the storms it had never yet faced. The tree that seems to effortlessly withstand the tempest has actually been practicing discipline in every moment of its growth. What choices are you making in this season of your life? The undisciplined person lives in reaction. When hunger strikes, they eat without thought. When anger rises, they lash out without pause. When fear whispers, they retreat without question. They have surrendered their greatest gift, the space between stimulus and response, and wonder why their lives feel chaotic and unfulfilled. But you are awakening to a different reality. You are discovering that between every impulse and action lives a sacred pause, a moment of infinite possibility where your true power resides. In this space, you choose not based on how you feel, but based on who you are becoming. The disciplined mind understands that every choice is a vote for your identity. When you choose the difficult conversation over comfortable silence, you vote for courage. When you choose the challenging workout over the soft couch, you vote for vitality. When you choose to serve others over serving only yourself, you vote for significance. Choice by choice, you sculpt yourself into the person you were meant to be. Yet here lies the profound misunderstanding that keeps most people trapped. They believe discipline means forcing themselves to do things they hate. This is the discipline of the ego, born from shame and sustained by willpower alone. It creates internal warfare and inevitably leads to rebellion against oneself. True discipline, the discipline of the wise, flows from love. You do not discipline yourself because you are flawed, but because you are magnificent. You choose the harder path not to punish yourself, but to honor the greatness within you that demands expression. Think of the artist who rises before dawn, not because she despises sleep, but because she loves creation more than comfort. Consider the parent who sacrifices personal desires for their child's well-being, not from obligation, but from the deepest love. Watch the master craftsman who spends years perfecting his skill, not because he enjoys tedium, but because excellence calls to something sacred within him. What is calling to the sacred within you? When you align your choices with your deepest values rather than your immediate desires, you tap into an inexhaustible source of energy. The person trying to lose weight through self-hatred will always struggle against themselves, but the person who chooses nourishing food from love of their body, their family, their future, they have enlisted their entire being in support of their goal. This shift transforms everything. Where once you felt deprived, you now feel empowered. Where once you felt restricted, you now feel free. Where once you battled yourself, you now flow with the current of your highest nature. The undisciplined person asks, "What do I want to do right now?" The disciplined person asks, "What does the person I am becoming need me to do right now?" It is the difference between being driven by the winds of circumstance and being guided by the compass of character. But do not mistake this for perfection. The path of discipline is not about never falling. It is about rising each time with greater wisdom. Every moment offers a fresh choice. Every breath brings a new opportunity to align with your truth. You are not defined by your last decision, but empowered by your next one. The ancient Stoics understood that while you cannot control what happens to you, you possess absolute dominion over how you respond. This recognition is not merely philosophical. It is the foundation of all personal power. In claiming responsibility for your choices, you claim authorship of your life. When you embrace this truth, you stop looking for external sources to blame for your circumstances. You stop waiting for conditions to be perfect before you act with discipline. You realize that every challenge is an invitation to strengthen your character, every temptation an opportunity to practice your values, every setback a chance to demonstrate your commitment to growth. The person who exercises only when they feel motivated will exercise rarely. The person who works only when they feel inspired will accomplish little. The person who loves only when it is easy will know only shallow connections. But the person who acts from discipline, from the deep commitment to honor who they are becoming, creates the very conditions that generate motivation, inspiration, and deeper love. What conditions are you creating through your daily choices? You are writing the story of your life one choice at a time. Each decision is a sentence, each day a paragraph, each season a chapter. You can write a story of reaction and regret, or you can author a tale of intention and growth. You can live as a character trapped by circumstances, or you can step into your role as both the writer and the hero of your own journey. The discipline of choice is ultimately the discipline of love. Love for your future self, love for your highest potential, love for the contribution only you can make to this world. When you choose from this love, discipline becomes not a burden to bear, but wings that carry you toward the life you were born to live. In this moment, as you read these words, you stand again at the crossroads. The comfortable path beckons with promises of ease and immediate gratification. The path of discipline calls with the quiet voice of your deepest knowing. Which voice will you follow, and who will you become through that choice? 5. The sacred do, protecting your inner sanctuary. You stand at the crossroads of every moment, holding the power to honor or betray yourself. In your hands lies an ancient key that unlocks freedom itself, the ability to say no. Yet most people surrender this power without knowing they possess it, scattering their life force like leaves in an endless wind. The undisciplined mind believes it must say yes to everything. It fears missing out, disappointing others, or appearing selfish. But you are not your fears. You are the guardian of something far more precious than temporary approval, your inner sanctuary. Consider the mighty oak that stands unmoved by shifting seasons. It does not bend to every passing breeze or extend its branches toward every demand for shade. Instead, it grows according to its nature, drawing nourishment only from sources that serve its highest expression. The oak understands what you must learn. Selective attention creates strength, while scattered energy creates weakness. What would change in your life if you protected your energy as carefully as you protect your most valuable possessions? When you observe the conditioned mind, you witness a pattern of automatic compliance. It says yes to distractions that drain vitality. It agrees to commitments that conflict with deeper values. It accepts mediocrity in relationships, work, and daily choices because rejection feels uncomfortable. This mind operates from scarcity, believing that opportunities are limited and approval is essential for survival. The awakened consciousness recognizes that every yes contains a hidden no. When you agree to spend evening hours in meaningless activities, you simultaneously refuse time for creative expression, intimate connection, or personal growth. When you accept treatment that diminishes your worth, you reject the possibility of relationships that honor your true nature. You become what you repeatedly say yes to. If you consistently agree to rush, overwhelm, and scattered attention, you train yourself to live in chaos. If you habitually accept less than your heart truly desires, you condition yourself to expect limitation. But when you learn to say no with grace and conviction, you create space for what matters most to flourish. Does the fear of disappointing others prevent you from honoring your deepest truths? The sacred no is not about building walls or rejecting connection. It springs from love for your purpose, your relationships, and your contribution to the world. When you decline opportunities that do not align with your highest vision, you preserve energy for those that do. When you refuse to engage in conversations that drain your spirit, you become more present for exchanges that inspire and uplift. This practice requires you to distinguish between your authentic desires and the expectations others project upon you. The conditioned mind seeks external validation, agreeing to requests because it wants to be liked, accepted, or perceived as helpful. It fears that saying no will result in isolation or judgment. The awakened consciousness understands that authentic relationships thrive on honest boundaries. People who truly care for your well-being want you to honor your values, not abandon them for their comfort. Those who react with anger or manipulation when you establish loving limits reveal their attachment to controlling your choices rather than celebrating your growth. You transform from people pleaser to purpose server. Instead of scattering your gifts to satisfy everyone's whims, you focus your talents where they create the greatest impact. Instead of diluting your presence across countless shallow commitments, you bring your full attention to what genuinely matters. Like the river that carves canyons through persistent flow in one direction, rather than spreading aimlessly across the landscape, your focused energy shapes reality. When you consistently say no to distraction, you say yes to mastery. When you decline invitations that do not serve your vision, you create availability for opportunities that do. How might your relationships deepen if you showed up only when you could give your authentic presence? The practice begins with small moments. Notice when you automatically agree to requests without consulting your inner wisdom. Pause before responding. Ask yourself whether this commitment aligns with your values and supports your highest goals. If the answer is no, practice declining with kindness and clarity. You need not justify your boundaries or convince others of their validity. A simple, "that doesn't work for me," or "I'm not available," suffices. The need to over-explain often stems from guilt, or the belief that your time and energy belong to others rather than being entrusted to your stewardship. As you strengthen this practice, you discover that saying no becomes easier and more natural. You begin to trust your inner guidance rather than seeking permission from external authorities. You recognize that protecting your energy is not selfish. It is essential for showing up powerfully in the roles and relationships you choose to embrace. The sacred no creates the sacred yes. When you decline commitments that drain your vitality, you preserve capacity for those that ignite your passion. When you refuse to accept treatment that diminishes your worth, you become available for connections that honor your true nature. When you say no to rushed, scattered attention, you create space for the deep presence that transforms ordinary moments into gateways for joy, creativity, and love. You are not meant to be everything to everyone. You are meant to be fully yourself for those who value your authentic gifts. The world needs your unique contribution, not your exhausted compliance. Your highest service emerges from overflow, not depletion. In which areas of your life have you been saying yes when your soul whispers no? And what would become possible if you honored that inner wisdom? 6. The practice of voluntary discomfort. You have been conditioned to believe that comfort is your natural state, that ease is your birthright, and that any friction in your life represents a problem to be solved immediately. This conditioning has made you weak. The ancient Stoics understood a profound truth that modern people have forgotten. Strength grows only under pressure, and discipline develops only when tested against resistance. They practice something called voluntary discomfort, deliberately choosing temporary hardship to build their capacity for handling life's inevitable challenges. When you deliberately step into discomfort while you still have the luxury of choice, you transform from someone who reacts to circumstances into someone who creates them. You become the sculptor of your own character rather than its victim. Consider how a blacksmith shapes metal. He does not work with cold, rigid steel, hoping it will bend to his will. He subjects the metal to intense heat, making it malleable, then strikes it repeatedly against the anvil. Each blow appears destructive, yet each blow creates the desired form. The metal becomes stronger, more refined, more useful with each deliberate strike. Your character follows the same principle. When you voluntarily expose yourself to controlled discomfort, you become malleable. The rigid patterns of avoidance and weakness begin to dissolve. Each deliberate choice to embrace difficulty rather than flee from it strikes against the anvil of your will, shaping you into someone stronger. What would happen if you stopped running from every small inconvenience and instead welcomed it as training? The conditioned consciousness seeks the path of least resistance in every moment. It chooses the comfortable chair, the easy conversation, the familiar routine. It avoids the cold shower, the difficult project, the challenging relationship conversation. This consciousness believes that life should flow without friction, that comfort equals success. The awakened consciousness understands that resistance creates strength. It chooses the harder path, not for suffering's sake, but for growth's sake. It welcomes the cold shower as mental training, embraces the difficult project as skill development, and engages in challenging conversations as relationship deepening. You can begin this practice immediately, in the smallest ways. Take a cold shower when you prefer warmth. Walk instead of taking convenient transportation. Sit in silence instead of reaching for entertainment. Fast for a meal when you feel hungry. Sleep on the floor instead of your comfortable bed. These actions may seem insignificant, but they represent a fundamental shift in your relationship with discomfort. You stop being someone who avoids challenge and become someone who seeks it. You stop being someone who crumbles under pressure and become someone who thrives within it. The power of voluntary discomfort extends far beyond the specific uncomfortable experience. When you prove to yourself that you can choose discomfort, you develop unshakable confidence in your ability to handle whatever life presents. You know, with absolute certainty that you can endure because you have practiced enduring. This knowing transforms everything. In your relationships, you stop avoiding difficult conversations because you have trained yourself to move toward discomfort rather than away from it. In your work, you stop procrastinating on challenging projects because you have developed the muscle of doing what is hard. In your personal growth, you stop settling for mediocrity because you have cultivated the capacity to push beyond comfortable limits. How often do you choose the easy path simply because it is easy, not because it serves your highest good? The practice works because it separates your identity from your temporary feelings. When you voluntarily choose cold when you want warmth, you prove that you are not controlled by the desire for warmth. When you choose to remain hungry when you could easily eat, you demonstrate that hunger does not define your choices. When you choose physical discomfort when comfort is available, you establish yourself as the director of your experience rather than its prisoner. This separation between your essential self and your temporary sensations creates profound freedom. You realize that discomfort cannot harm the real you. It can only strengthen your capacity to remain centered regardless of external conditions. The conditioned consciousness says, "I am cold, therefore I must seek warmth immediately." The awakened consciousness says, "I notice the sensation of cold, and I choose my response based on what serves my development rather than what feels immediately pleasant." Most people live as servants to their momentary preferences. They eat when they feel like eating, rest when they feel like resting, speak when they feel like speaking, and avoid whatever feels unpleasant. This reactive pattern keeps them weak and dependent on circumstances for their peace of mind. You can choose a different path. You can become someone who acts from intention rather than impulse, who chooses based on long-term benefit rather than short-term comfort, who grows stronger through deliberate challenge rather than weaker through constant ease. Start small, but start today. Choose one form of voluntary discomfort and practice it consistently, not as punishment, but as training. Not to prove your toughness, but to develop your character. Not to suffer, but to grow beyond the need to avoid suffering. The goal is not to become someone who enjoys discomfort for its own sake. The goal is to become someone who is not controlled by the temporary presence or absence of comfort. You develop the capacity to remain peaceful and purposeful regardless of external conditions. What you will discover through this practice is that most of what you thought was necessary for your happiness was actually optional. Most of what you believed you could not handle, you can handle with grace. Most of what seemed like obstacles to your growth were actually opportunities for your growth. This realization shifts everything. You stop being afraid of challenge because you have proven your ability to meet it. You stop being dependent on perfect conditions because you have learned to thrive in imperfect ones. You stop being at the mercy of circumstances because you have developed mastery over your responses. When difficulty arrives uninvited in your life, and it will, you meet it as a friend rather than an enemy. You recognize it as another opportunity to strengthen the very capacities you have been developing through voluntary practice. If you knew with absolute certainty that you could handle any challenge life presented, how differently would you move through your days? 7. The discipline of delayed gratification. You live in a world designed to steal your future. Every moment presents a choice between what you want now and what you want most. The person you become depends entirely on which voice you choose to follow. The undisciplined mind speaks with urgency. It whispers that comfort should come before growth, pleasure before progress, ease before excellence. This voice has trained you to reach for immediate relief from discomfort, instant satisfaction from desire, and quick escape from challenge. You have been conditioned to believe that waiting is suffering, and that suffering should be avoided at all costs. But what if everything you believed about waiting was wrong? Consider the farmer who plants his field in spring. Each day he walks past his barren soil while his neighbors enjoy the harvest from last year's crop. The earth shows no sign of the abundance growing beneath, yet the farmer continues to water, weed, and tend his invisible investment. He understands what the instant gratification seeker cannot grasp. True wealth grows in darkness, silence, and time. The disciplined mind operates from a different understanding. It recognizes that every moment of delay is actually an investment. Every no to immediate pleasure becomes a yes to future abundance. Every choice to embrace temporary discomfort creates permanent transformation. When you delay gratification, you are not postponing happiness. You are compounding it. The ancient Stoics understood this principle as the foundation of all human achievement. They knew that the person who could master the space between impulse and action would master life itself. They called this practice prosocia, the art of paying attention to what truly matters rather than what merely demands attention. Think about your own life. Where has immediate gratification promised you satisfaction but delivered emptiness? Perhaps you have chosen the temporary comfort of avoiding difficult conversations, only to find your relationships growing distant. Maybe you have reached for quick entertainment instead of pursuing meaningful work, wondering later why your days feel hollow. Or you might have sought instant relief from stress through consumption, discovering that the relief was shorter than the regret. The conditioned consciousness believes that discipline equals deprivation. It sees delayed gratification as punishment, sacrifice as loss, and patience as passive waiting. This consciousness creates a life of constant hunger, always consuming but never satisfied, always seeking but never finding, always beginning but never completing. The awakened consciousness understands that discipline equals freedom. It sees delayed gratification as investment, sacrifice as exchange, and patience as active creation. This consciousness builds a life of deep fulfillment, satisfied with less because it values more, finding because it seeks with purpose, completing because it begins with commitment. You become what you repeatedly choose. If you repeatedly choose immediate pleasure over long-term benefit, you become a person enslaved to impulse. If you repeatedly choose delayed reward over instant gratification, you become a person who shapes reality through will. But how do you make this shift when every fiber of your conditioning pulls you toward the immediate? The secret lies in changing what you see when you delay. The untrained mind sees only what it's giving up. The trained mind sees what it's gaining. You must learn to feel the future as intensely as you feel the present moment. When you choose to save money instead of spending it, you are not losing the ability to purchase something today. You are gaining the ability to purchase freedom tomorrow. When you choose to exercise instead of resting, you are not losing comfort. You are gaining vitality. When you choose to study instead of seeking entertainment, you are not losing pleasure. You are gaining power. What future version of yourself are you creating with today's choices? The practice begins with small decisions. Can you wait 5 minutes before checking your messages? Can you prepare a healthy meal instead of ordering convenience food? Can you complete one task fully before starting another? These tiny delays train your capacity for larger ones. Notice how your mind responds to these micro practices. The voice that screams now grows quieter when you stop obeying it instantly. The voice that whispers later grows stronger when you start listening to its wisdom. You are literally rewiring your neural pathways with every choice to wait. The most profound aspect of delayed gratification is not what you gain in the future, but who you become in the present. Each moment you delay gratification, you prove to yourself that you are not a victim of circumstance, but a creator of destiny. You demonstrate that you can feel discomfort without being controlled by it, experience desire without being enslaved to it, and face uncertainty without being paralyzed by it. You discover that you are larger than your impulses. Consider how this principle applies to any area where you seek growth. If you desire deeper relationships, delayed gratification means choosing vulnerable conversation over comfortable silence. If you seek creative expression, it means choosing the difficult work of creation over the easy consumption of others' work. If you want financial freedom, it means choosing investment over immediate consumption. If you pursue spiritual development, it means choosing present moment awareness over mental escape. The currency is always the same: temporary discomfort exchanged for permanent transformation. The person who masters delayed gratification holds the key to every form of success. They understand that all achievement is simply the compound interest of discipline applied over time. They know that the gap between wanting something and having it is filled not with suffering, but with becoming. Yet, delayed gratification is not about becoming a person who never enjoys the present moment. It is about becoming a person who enjoys the present moment more fully because they are not enslaved by it. When you can choose your responses rather than being controlled by your reactions, you taste freedom in every decision. Your future self is watching every choice you make today. They are silently pleading with you to remember that the temporary is exactly that. Temporary. The discomfort of discipline weighs ounces. The regret of neglect weighs tons. The question is not whether you can delay gratification. The question is whether you will choose to become the person who does. What are you willing to wait for today so that your future self can inherit a life beyond what your present self can imagine? 8. The power of daily practice. The ancient Stoics understood a truth that modern society has forgotten. Excellence is not an act, but a habit. You do not become disciplined through grand gestures or dramatic transformations. You become disciplined through the quiet accumulation of daily choices, each one building upon the last, like stones in a foundation. Consider the mighty oak that stands centuries against the wind. It did not achieve its strength through a single season of growth, but through countless cycles of drawing nutrients from the earth, day after day, year after year. Its power lies not in dramatic spurts, but in the consistency of its daily practice of reaching both deep into the soil and high toward the sun. You are no different. The person you become tomorrow is determined by what you choose to practice today. Most people live at the mercy of their moods and circumstances. When they feel motivated, they act with discipline. When motivation fades, they abandon their practices and wonder why lasting change eludes them. This is the consciousness of the conditioned mind, believing that feeling must precede action, that inspiration must strike before discipline can follow. The awakened consciousness operates from a different understanding. You recognize that action creates feeling, not the other way around. You understand that discipline is not about having the energy to do what serves you. It is about doing what serves you regardless of your energy level. This shift in understanding changes everything. What daily practice are you committed to, regardless of how you feel when you wake each morning? Your daily practice becomes the sculptor of your character. Each day that you honor your commitment to yourself, you strengthen the neural pathways of discipline. Each day that you choose what serves your growth over what feels comfortable in the moment, you expand your identity from someone who occasionally acts with discipline to someone who is disciplined. The conditioned mind seeks complexity and novelty. It believes that transformation requires elaborate systems, perfect conditions, or revolutionary changes. It searches for the secret technique, the perfect morning routine, or the ideal circumstances that will finally make discipline effortless. The awakened mind embraces simplicity. You choose one or two practices that align with your deepest values and you commit to them completely. You understand that the magic lies not in the complexity of what you do, but in the consistency with which you do it. A simple practice performed daily for a year will transform you more profoundly than the most sophisticated system practiced sporadically. Think of the river that carves through stone. The water possesses no special power in any single moment. Its strength lies in its relentless return, day after day, following the same path until the impossible becomes inevitable. You too possess this power of persistent return. Which simple practice could you commit to for the next 100 days, regardless of circumstances? Your relationship with your daily practice reveals your relationship with yourself. When you honor your commitments to yourself, you build deep self-trust. When you break promises to yourself repeatedly, you erode your own confidence in your ability to change. This internal relationship determines whether you approach challenges with the certainty of someone who keeps their word or the doubt of someone who has learned not to trust their own promises. The practice itself matters less than your relationship to it. Whether you choose to write, meditate, exercise, read, or serve others, the true transformation occurs in the daily choice to show up. You are training yourself to be someone who does what they say they will do. You are becoming someone whose word to themselves is sacred. Every morning, you face the same fundamental choice. Will you be directed by your impulses and moods, or will you direct them? Will you be someone who acts only when inspired, or someone whose daily actions inspire their feelings? Will you postpone your practice until tomorrow, or will you understand that tomorrow's strength is built through today's choices? The conditioned mind approaches daily practice as a burden to bear. It focuses on what it must give up, what it costs to maintain consistency, how difficult it feels to show up when motivation is absent. From this perspective, discipline feels like imprisonment. The awakened mind approaches daily practice as a gift to receive. You focus on who you become through your consistency, what you gain through your commitment, how each day of practice expands your sense of what is possible. From this perspective, discipline feels like freedom. When you commit to a daily practice and honor that commitment, regardless of external circumstances, something profound shifts in your relationship to challenge itself. You begin to see obstacles not as reasons to abandon your practice, but as opportunities to strengthen it. You discover that your capacity to maintain your discipline during difficult times determines your ability to create lasting change. Your daily practice becomes your anchor in the storm of life's uncertainties. When relationships challenge you, when work demands more than you feel you can give, when unexpected circumstances disrupt your plans, your practice remains. It becomes the one constant you can control, the foundation upon which everything else rests. What aspect of your character would transform if you maintained a daily practice that served your highest vision for one full year? The ancient Stoics practiced their philosophy daily, not because it was easy, but because they understood that wisdom unused becomes wisdom lost. They knew that the gap between knowing what serves you and actually doing what serves you is bridged only through consistent practice. You close this gap one day at a time, not through perfection, but through persistence. Not through grand gestures, but through small, consistent choices that compound over time into extraordinary results. The person you are becoming is not determined by your intentions or your insights, but by your daily practices. These practices, maintained with unwavering commitment, become the foundation upon which all other achievements rest. If the person you wish to become practiced one thing every single day, what would that practice be? 9. The inner guardian. Mastering your mental gates. You stand at the threshold of every moment with an invisible guardian by your side. This guardian possesses the power to determine what thoughts enter your mind, what emotions take residence in your heart, and what experiences shape your reality. Yet most people never acknowledge this guardian exists, let alone learn to direct its vigilant watch. The Stoics understood what modern people have forgotten. You are the keeper of your own mental gates. Every thought that gains entry, every emotion that finds a home within you, every reaction that springs forth from your consciousness passes through gates that you alone control. When you master this ancient practice of mental gatekeeping, you transform from a victim of circumstance into an architect of experience. Consider the mighty oak that stands unmoved by passing storms. The wind may howl and the rain may pound, yet the oak remains rooted in its essential nature. It does not resist the storm by fighting against every gust of wind. Instead, it maintains its center while allowing the storm to pass around it. The oak's strength lies not in its hardness, but in its selective permeability. It draws nourishment from the rain while remaining unmoved by the chaos above. Your mind possesses this same selective capacity. You can learn to be permeable to wisdom while remaining unmoved by the mental storms that once devastated your peace. But this requires conscious cultivation of your inner guardian. What thoughts do you currently allow to occupy your mental dwelling, without question? The conditioned consciousness operates like a house with no doors, no windows, and no walls. Every mental intruder wanders in freely. Every negative suggestion finds immediate lodging. Every fearful projection sets up permanent residence. The conditioned person believes they must entertain every thought that appears, must feel every emotion that arises, and must react to every external stimulus that presents itself. They think, "I can't help what I think." They feel, "These emotions are too powerful to control." They react, "Anyone would respond this way in my situation." The awakened consciousness recognizes itself as the discerning guardian of an exquisite inner sanctuary. Not every thought deserves consideration. Not every emotion requires expression. Not every external event demands a reaction. The awakened person understands that consciousness is not a public space, but a private domain requiring careful curation. They know, "I choose which thoughts deserve my attention." They understand, "I can acknowledge emotions without being enslaved by them." They realize, "My response is always my choice, regardless of circumstances." This gatekeeping practice operates through 3 essential recognitions. First, you recognize that thoughts are visitors, not residents. They arrive uninvited, but you determine how long they stay and what influence they wield. A negative thought about your abilities appears. You can examine it briefly for any useful information, then escort it to the exit. A fearful projection about the future emerges. You can acknowledge its presence without offering it a permanent home. How would your daily experience change if you treated thoughts as temporary visitors rather than permanent residents? Second, you recognize that emotions are energy in motion, not fixed states of being. The conditioned consciousness identifies with every emotional wave. I am angry. I am sad. I am anxious. The awakened consciousness observes emotional energy with detachment. Anger is moving through. Sadness is present. Anxiety is arising. This subtle shift in language reflects a profound shift in identity, from being your emotions to being the aware space through which emotions flow. Third, you recognize that external events are neutral until you assign them meaning. The same rainfall that ruins one person's picnic nourishes another person's garden. The same business setback that devastates one entrepreneur inspires another to innovate. The same criticism that crushes one artist motivates another to refine their craft. Events themselves carry no inherent meaning. You are the meaning maker, and this power of interpretation is where your freedom lies. When you fully embody these recognitions, you discover that self-discipline is not about forcing yourself to behave differently. It becomes about naturally choosing thoughts, emotions, and responses that align with who you are becoming. The oak does not strain to remain rooted. Its nature is to be rooted. When you know yourself as the guardian of your inner sanctuary, maintaining healthy mental boundaries becomes as natural as breathing. Does your current relationship with your thoughts serve the person you are becoming? Your desires, whether for love, wealth, health, purpose, or peace, cannot flourish in an unguarded mind any more than a garden can thrive when every weed is welcomed alongside every flower. The person seeking love must guard against thoughts of unworthiness. The person pursuing wealth must refuse resonance to beliefs about scarcity. The person cultivating health must deny entry to mental patterns that undermine vitality. This is not about positive thinking or mental force. This is about conscious selection. You become selective not because you fear negative thoughts, but because you recognize that your consciousness is precious real estate. You would not allow strangers to rearrange your living room. Why allow random thoughts to rearrange your inner landscape? The practice itself is elegantly simple. Throughout each day you pause and ask yourself, what am I allowing into my mental space right now? Notice without judgment. If you discover thoughts that do not serve your highest good, you simply redirect your attention toward thoughts that do. If you notice emotions that disturb your peace, you acknowledge them without becoming them. If you find yourself reacting automatically to external events, you step back into your role as conscious responder rather than unconscious reactor. This is how you reclaim your birthright as the author of your own experience. This is how you transform self-discipline from an effortful struggle into a natural expression of your awakened nature. The guardian you seek already exists within you, waiting for your recognition and invitation to serve. When you embrace this role fully, every moment becomes an opportunity to choose who you are becoming. What would become possible in your life if you truly accepted responsibility for guarding the gates of your consciousness? 10. The discipline of detachment. You have been taught a lie about success. The world whispers that achievement comes through grasping, clinging, and forcing outcomes into existence through sheer will. Yet the ancient Stoics understood a profound paradox. The tighter you grip, the more control slips through your fingers. Consider the master craftsman at work. His hands move with precision and purpose, yet they remain relaxed. He applies exactly the pressure needed to shape his creation, no more, no less. When he grips the tool too tightly, his movements become rigid and clumsy. When he holds too loosely, he loses all influence. The mastery lies in the perfect balance between engagement and release. This is the discipline of detachment, perhaps the most misunderstood principle of human excellence. It does not mean withdrawal from life or abandonment of your dreams. It means learning to pour your full effort into your actions while releasing your desperate need to control every outcome. What would change in your life if you could work with complete dedication, yet without the crushing weight of attachment to results? The conditioned mind operates from a place of scarcity and fear. It believes that happiness depends entirely on getting what it wants when it wants it. This mind clings to people, possessions, and outcomes as if they were life preservers in a stormy sea. It suffers when things don't go according to plan and lives in constant anxiety about losing what it has gained. The awakened consciousness understands a deeper truth. Your peace and power come not from controlling external circumstances, but from mastering your internal responses. This mind engages fully with life while holding outcomes lightly, like water cupped in open palms. When you practice the discipline of detachment, you discover a remarkable freedom. You can pursue your goals with unwavering commitment because you are not paralyzed by the fear of failure. You can love deeply without the suffocating need to possess. You can create boldly without the crushing weight of perfectionism. Think of a river flowing toward the ocean. It moves with purpose and power, carving through rock and nourishing all life along its path. Yet it does not struggle against the stones that redirect its course. It simply flows around them, always moving toward its destination, but never fighting the present moment. The river teaches you that persistence and acceptance can coexist in perfect harmony. How might your relationships transform if you could love without needing to control or change the other person? The practice begins with recognizing the difference between preference and attachment. You can prefer certain outcomes while remaining unattached to them. You can work diligently toward your goals while accepting that the universe may have different plans. This is not passive resignation. It is active surrender to a wisdom greater than your limited perspective. When you release attachment to outcomes, you free yourself to take inspired action. Your decisions are no longer clouded by desperation or distorted by fear. You can see opportunities clearly and respond to challenges with wisdom rather than reactivity. You become like a skilled dancer who moves with the music rather than fighting against the rhythm. The conditioned mind says, I must have this specific job, this particular person's approval, this exact amount of money, or I cannot be happy. The awakened consciousness says, I will give my best effort to my work, my relationships, and my dreams, and I trust that whatever unfolds will serve my highest growth. This shift in perspective transforms everything. When you are not attached to getting, you become free to give. When you are not obsessed with receiving love, you become capable of offering it freely. When you are not desperate for success, you can take the very risks that create breakthrough results. Consider how attachment creates its own suffering. You achieve a goal you have been chasing for years, only to find that the satisfaction fades quickly. The promotion, the relationship, the recognition, none of them fill the void you expected them to fill. This is because you were seeking completion in something external when wholeness can only be found within yourself. What if the very thing you think you need to be happy is actually keeping you from discovering the happiness that already exists within you? The discipline of detachment reveals that you are already complete. Your worth does not depend on your achievements, your relationships, or your possessions. These things can enhance your experience, but they cannot create your essential value. When you truly understand this, you can pursue your dreams from a place of joy rather than desperation, from abundance rather than lack. Practice begins in small moments. Notice when you feel tense about an outcome. Observe the physical sensations of clinging, the tight chest, the clenched jaw, the shallow breathing. Then consciously choose to relax your grip. Tell yourself, I care about this outcome, and I release my need to control it. This is not about becoming indifferent to your life. It is about becoming so secure in your own worth that you can engage fully without being devastated by temporary setbacks. You can pour your heart into your work, your relationships, and your dreams, while trusting that you will be okay regardless of what happens. The awakened consciousness understands that life is not something that happens to you. It is something that flows through you. When you align yourself with this flow, rather than fighting against it, you discover a power that no amount of forcing could ever generate. You become an instrument through which life expresses its infinite creativity. Your true power lies not in controlling outcomes, but in choosing your responses. You cannot determine every external circumstance, but you can always determine how you meet whatever arises. This is the ultimate freedom, and it is always available to you in this moment. The discipline of detachment transforms you from a victim of circumstances into a master of your own experience. You stop demanding that life conform to your limited vision and start trusting in the intelligence that sees far beyond what your eyes can perceive. What would you dare to attempt if you knew that your peace and worth were independent of whether you succeeded or failed? 11. The art of delaying gratification. You stand at the crossroads of every moment, facing a choice that will either strengthen or weaken the person you are becoming. This choice appears so simple that most people miss its profound significance entirely. It is the choice between what you want now and what you want most. The conditioned mind operates like a restless child in a marketplace, reaching for every shiny object that catches its attention. It mistakes urgency for importance and confuses impulse with intuition. The awakened consciousness, however, moves with the steady rhythm of seasons, understanding that all worthwhile things ripen in their own time. Consider the patient gardener who plants seeds in spring, knowing that summer's heat and autumn's harvest lie months ahead. The gardener does not dig up the seeds each week to check their progress, nor does she abandon the garden when weeds appear. She tends, she waits, she trusts the process. What quality does this gardener possess that enables her to work today for rewards she will not see until tomorrow? You are learning to become the gardener of your own life. Every time you choose the harder path, when an easier one beckons, you are planting seeds. Every time you say no to immediate pleasure in service of long-term fulfillment, you are tending your garden. Every time you remain faithful to your highest vision when lower impulses call, you are trusting the process. The ancient Stoics understood this principle with crystalline clarity. They recognized that the ability to delay gratification is not merely a useful skill, it is the very foundation upon which all achievement rests. Without it, you remain forever trapped in the shallow waters of momentary satisfaction, never venturing into the deeper currents where your true desires can be fulfilled. What separates the person who achieves their dreams from the person who only talks about them? The conditioned consciousness lives in constant reaction to its environment. It sees an attractive offer and buys immediately. It feels an uncomfortable emotion and seeks instant relief. It faces a difficult task and chooses an easier distraction. This reactive pattern creates a life of scattered energy and unfulfilled potential. The awakened consciousness, by contrast, operates from a deeper center of knowing. It asks not, "What do I want right now?" but "What do I want my life to become?" It measures every choice against this larger vision, accepting present discomfort for future expansion. You are not at the mercy of your impulses. You are their master. But mastery comes only through practice, and practice begins with awareness. Start noticing the countless small moments throughout your day when you face the choice between immediate gratification and delayed reward, the choice to check your phone or finish your work, the choice to eat the dessert or honor your health, the choice to avoid a difficult conversation or speak your truth. These moments may seem insignificant, but they are anything but. Like droplets of water that eventually carve canyons through solid rock, your small choices accumulate into the magnificent sculpture of your character. Each time you choose delay over instant gratification, you are carving away everything that is not essential, revealing the person you were meant to become. The practice begins simply. When you feel the pull of an immediate desire, pause. Take a single breath and ask yourself, if I delay this gratification, who will I become? Feel into the future version of yourself who consistently makes choices aligned with your highest values. What would that person do in this moment? How different would your life look if you made every decision from this elevated perspective? This is not about denying yourself pleasure or living a life of grim determination. The awakened person experiences far greater joy than someone trapped in the endless cycle of impulse and regret. They know the deep satisfaction that comes from achieving meaningful goals, the quiet confidence that grows from keeping promises to yourself, and the profound peace of living in alignment with your values. When you delay gratification skillfully, you are not postponing happiness. You are choosing a richer, more lasting form of it. You are choosing the happiness that comes from becoming who you are capable of being, rather than remaining who you have always been. The path requires patience, but patience is not passive waiting. True patience is active faith in your own potential. It is the willingness to invest today's comfort for tomorrow's transformation. It is the wisdom to plant oak trees whose shade you may not enjoy for decades, knowing that the planting itself changes who you are. You are developing the capacity to hold your desires lightly while pursuing them with determination. You are learning to want what you want without being controlled by the wanting. You are discovering that the person who can delay gratification is the person who can achieve anything. Your impulses will not disappear overnight, nor should they. They are part of your human experience, but they no longer need to drive your decisions. You are becoming someone who can acknowledge an impulse, appreciate its message, and choose your response consciously. Start where you are. Begin with small practices of delay. When you want to buy something, wait 24 hours. When you want to react emotionally, take 3 deep breaths. When you want To abandon a difficult task, commit to 5 more minutes. These simple practices will strengthen your capacity for larger acts of patience and self-command. What would become possible in your life if you could consistently choose your long-term vision over your immediate impulses? 12. The art of conscious response. You stand at a crossroads in every moment of your life. One path leads to automatic reaction, the other to conscious response. The Stoics understood that between stimulus and response lies your greatest power, the power to choose. Most people live as prisoners of their immediate impulses. They react to criticism with anger, to setbacks with despair, to success with pride, to uncertainty with fear. Their emotional state becomes the helpless victim of external circumstances. They believe they have no choice but to feel what they feel, to act as they act, to be as they are. But you are not most people. You are awakening to a profound truth that transforms everything. You always have a choice in how you respond. What would change in your life if you mastered the space between what happens to you and how you respond? Consider the mighty oak that has weathered 1,000 storms. When fierce winds strike, the oak does not react with brittle resistance that would snap its trunk. Instead, it responds with flexible strength, bending without breaking, yielding without surrendering. The oak has learned the art of conscious response through countless seasons of practice. You, too, can develop this same responsive wisdom. When someone speaks harshly to you, you need not immediately defend or attack. When unexpected challenges arise, you need not immediately panic or despair. When opportunities appear, you need not immediately grasp or hesitate. You can pause, you can breathe, you can choose. The conditioned mind operates from automatic programming. It reacts to triggers with predictable patterns learned long ago. Criticism triggers defensiveness. Rejection triggers withdrawal. Success triggers attachment. These reactions happen so quickly they feel involuntary, like reflexes beyond your control. But the awakened consciousness recognizes these patterns and interrupts them. It creates space between the trigger and the response. In that space lives your freedom, the freedom to respond from wisdom rather than wound, from strength rather than fear, from love rather than protection. This transformation begins with a simple practice, the conscious pause. Before you speak in anger, pause. Before you act from fear, pause. Before you react from old conditioning, pause. In that pause, ask yourself a different question. Instead of, how do I protect myself? Ask, how do I respond with wisdom? Instead of, how do I win this argument? Ask, how do I serve the highest good? Instead of, how do I avoid this discomfort? Ask, how do I grow from this experience? These questions shift you from reactive mode to responsive mode. They transform you from a victim of circumstances to a conscious creator of your experience. The art of conscious response applies to every area of your life. In relationships, you respond to your partner's mood with understanding rather than matching their energy. In work, you respond to pressure with calm focus rather than frantic activity. In health, you respond to stress with nourishing practices rather than depleting habits. When you master conscious response, you discover that external circumstances lose their power over your inner state. Traffic delays become opportunities for patience. Difficult people become teachers of compassion. Setbacks become invitations for creativity. Criticism becomes data for improvement. You begin to see that everything that happens to you is neutral until you give it meaning through your response. The Stoics called this the discipline of perception, the recognition that events themselves are neither good nor bad, but your judgments and responses make them so. How differently would you move through the world if you truly believed that your response to any situation matters more than the situation itself? This shift requires practice, like learning any art. At first, you will catch yourself after you have already reacted. You will notice the defensive comment after it leaves your mouth, the anxious worry after it grips your mind, the angry gesture after you make it. This awareness itself is progress. You are waking up. Gradually, you begin to catch yourself in the middle of reactions. You feel the anger rising and pause before it explodes. You notice the fear forming and breathe before it paralyzes you. You sense the old pattern activating and choose something different. Eventually, you develop such sensitivity to your inner landscape that you catch the reactions before they begin. You feel the first whisper of irritation and transform it into curiosity. You sense the initial movement of fear and convert it into excitement. You recognize the subtle pull of old conditioning and redirect it toward growth. This is not about suppressing your emotions or pretending to feel differently than you do. It is about expanding your repertoire of responses beyond the automatic reactions that once limited you. You honor your feelings while choosing your actions consciously. The person who masters conscious response becomes unshakable, not because nothing bothers them, but because they can respond to anything with wisdom. They develop an inner stability that external circumstances cannot disturb. They become like deep waters, calm beneath the surface regardless of what storms may pass overhead. Your relationships transform when you respond rather than react. Instead of immediately defending when criticized, you listen for the grain of truth that might help you grow. Instead of attacking when hurt, you express your feelings with vulnerability. Instead of withdrawing when disappointed, you communicate your needs clearly. Your work flourishes when you respond, rather than react. Instead of becoming overwhelmed by deadlines, you prioritize with clarity. Instead of resenting difficult colleagues, you practice patience and seek understanding. Instead of panicking during challenges, you access creative problem solving. Your health improves when you respond rather than react. Instead of numbing stress with destructive habits, you process it through movement and reflection. Instead of ignoring your body's signals, you respond with rest or nourishment as needed. Instead of pushing through exhaustion, you honor your natural rhythms. What aspect of your life would benefit most from replacing automatic reaction with conscious response? As you practice this art, you discover that conscious response is really about aligning with your deepest values rather than your momentary impulses. You respond from the person you are becoming rather than the person you have been. You choose actions that reflect your highest self rather than your smallest fears. This alignment creates a profound sense of integrity and authenticity. You no longer feel like you are at the mercy of your moods or circumstances. You feel empowered, centered, and increasingly free. The ancient Stoics knew that this freedom, the freedom to choose your response, is the only freedom that can never be taken from you. External circumstances may constrain your choices, but they cannot dictate your responses unless you allow them to. You become the author of your experience rather than its victim. You become the artist of your responses rather than their slave. You become the conscious creator of your life rather than the unconscious reactor to its events. What would you create with your life if you responded to every situation from your wisest, most loving, most powerful self? 13. The power of present moment awareness. You have been trained to live everywhere except where life actually happens. Your mind races to tomorrow's possibilities or yesterday's regrets, while this moment, the only moment where your power truly exists, slips through your fingers like sand. The undisciplined mind believes that happiness, success, and fulfillment exist somewhere in the future, waiting to be discovered. The disciplined mind understands a profound truth. Everything you seek is accessible right now, in the quality of your presence to what is. Consider the mighty oak tree. It does not strain toward becoming a redwood or pine. It does not resist its current size while dreaming of its full-grown magnificence. In each moment, it draws from the soil what it needs, reaches toward the light available today, and grows with complete attention to the present conditions. The oak's power lies not in its destination, but in its absolute presence to the process of becoming. What would change in your life if you brought the same quality of presence to this moment that the oak brings to its growth? You are not your racing thoughts. You are the awareness that observes them. You are not your emotional reactions. You are the consciousness that can choose your response. When you anchor yourself in present moment awareness, you discover a source of strength that conditioned thinking cannot touch. The conditioned mind lives in constant agitation. It tells you that happiness exists in the next achievement, the next relationship, the next purchase, the next destination. It creates an endless cycle of seeking that never arrives at satisfaction because it refuses to be present to what already is. The awakened consciousness recognizes that this moment contains everything necessary for peace, clarity, and right action. It understands that presence is not passive, but the most dynamic force available to you. From presence comes intuition. From presence comes wisdom. From presence comes the ability to respond rather than react. How often do you miss the gifts of this moment while chasing the illusions of the next one? When you practice present moment awareness, you stop being a victim of time. Instead of time dragging you through life, you move through time with intention and grace. The same hours that once felt rushed and chaotic become spacious and meaningful. The same challenges that once overwhelmed you become opportunities for growth and expression of your highest character. Think of a flowing river. The water does not fight against the rocks in its path or resist the curves of its banks. It moves with complete presence through whatever landscape appears, always flowing toward its destination while remaining fully engaged with the terrain of now. The river's power comes not from forcing its way, but from its unwavering commitment to flow with what is. You become like this river when you practice present moment discipline. Obstacles become part of the landscape you navigate with grace rather than enemies to defeat. Unexpected changes become invitations to demonstrate your adaptability rather than disruptions to resist. What obstacles in your life might transform if you approach them with the flowing presence of a river? The practice begins with the simplest recognition. You are here now. Your breath is happening now. Your heart is beating now. Your capacity to choose your thoughts, words, and actions exists now. When your mind pulls you into past regrets or future anxieties, you gently return your attention to the reality of this present moment. This is not about forcing your mind into stillness or pretending that planning and reflection have no value. This is about recognizing where your true power lies. The past exists only in memory. The future exists only in imagination. Your ability to create, to love, to contribute, to grow, all of this exists in the eternal now. The conditioned consciousness treats the present moment as a stepping stone to somewhere else. It endures the now while waiting for life to begin in some imagined future scenario. This mindset creates a perpetual state of dissatisfaction and powerlessness. The awakened consciousness recognizes the present moment as the only point where life can be fully lived. It brings complete attention to current circumstances, current relationships, current opportunities, and current challenges. This creates a richness of experience that transforms ordinary moments into extraordinary ones. What would you discover about your current life if you stopped waiting for it to begin and started fully engaging with what already is? You become a person of presence through practice. Each time you catch your mind wandering into past or future, you exercise your discipline muscle by returning to now. Each time you choose to fully listen to someone speaking, rather than planning your response, you strengthen your capacity for presence. Each time you engage completely with the task at hand, rather than rushing through it to get to the next thing, you deepen your mastery of this moment. The rewards of this practice extend far beyond personal peace. When you become present, you become available to inspiration that cannot reach a scattered mind. You become capable of love that cannot flow through a divided heart. You become able to serve in ways that cannot emerge from anxious striving. Others feel the quality of your presence immediately. A person anchored in the now communicates with clarity, listens with genuine attention, and responds from wisdom rather than reactive patterns. This quality of being influences every relationship and every endeavor. Your desires, whether for love, abundance, health, creativity, or service, can only be fulfilled through present moment awareness. Love happens now. Abundance is recognized now. Health is cultivated now. Creativity flows now. Service is offered now. You are not becoming someone who will eventually have the power to create the life you want. You are someone who has that power right now, in this moment, through the quality of presence you bring to what is before you. If this moment contained everything you needed to take the next right step toward your deepest desires, what would that step be? 14. The art of selective attention. What you focus on becomes your reality. A master gardener walks through his vast estate each morning, but he does not see every blade of grass or count every leaf. His trained eye moves with purpose, noticing the subtle signs that matter, the curl of a leaf that signals disease, the color of soil that reveals its needs, the angle of a stem reaching toward light. He has learned the ancient art of selective attention, and his garden flourishes because of what he chooses to see. You are not a victim of your circumstances. You are the curator of your experience, the director of your attention, the sculptor of your reality through the simple yet profound act of choosing where you place your focus. Every moment, you stand at the crossroads between the conditioned mind that reacts to everything and the disciplined consciousness that selects deliberately. The undisciplined mind believes it must notice everything, respond to every stimulus, chase every thought that arises. It lives in constant reaction, pulled this way and that by whatever appears loudest or most urgent. This scattered attention creates scattered results, scattered emotions, and a scattered sense of self. The person trapped in this pattern wonders why their dreams remain distant while their days feel overwhelming. But you are awakening to a different way of being. You are discovering that attention is not passive reception, but active creation. What you consistently focus upon expands in your experience, shapes your emotions, and ultimately becomes your reality. This is not mystical thinking, but practical wisdom, observed by every person who has ever achieved mastery in any domain. Consider how this principle operates in your daily experience. When you focus on what is lacking in your relationships, you find more evidence of disappointment and distance. When you direct your attention to appreciation and connection, you discover opportunities for deeper intimacy that were always present but previously invisible to your unfocused mind. The relationship itself remains the same collection of moments and interactions, yet your experience of it transforms completely through the discipline of directed attention. What reality are you creating through your current patterns of focus? The ancient Stoics understood that external events possess no inherent meaning until filtered through human consciousness. They recognized that two people could witness identical circumstances, yet create entirely different experiences based solely on where they chose to direct their mental energy. This was not philosophical theory, but practical training for the art of living well. You become what you repeatedly attend to, because attention is the bridge between possibility and actuality. When you focus on problems, your mind becomes a problem-solving machine, naturally finding more problems to solve. When you focus on solutions, that same mental machinery redirects itself toward opportunity and creative response. When you focus on growth, you begin noticing the lessons embedded in every experience. When you focus on gratitude, you discover abundance hiding in plain sight. The practice begins with recognizing that you always have a choice, even when it feels like you do not. In the space between stimulus and response lives your power to select. This selection is not about denying reality or engaging in positive thinking that ignores genuine challenges. It is about training yourself to see with the eyes of possibility, rather than the eyes of limitation. How differently would you move through your days if you remembered that your attention shapes your world? Watch how the conditioned mind operates. It gravitates toward drama, conflict, and whatever confirms its existing beliefs about limitation and struggle. It seeks evidence that life is hard, people cannot be trusted, and dreams rarely come true. This is not because the mind is inherently negative, but because it has been trained through repetition to notice certain patterns while ignoring others. The awakened consciousness operates from a different foundation. It understands that life simultaneously contains infinite possibilities for both suffering and joy, limitation and expansion, fear and love. Rather than being tossed about by whatever captures attention accidentally, it exercises the discipline to choose consciously and consistently. This choice requires practice because the gravitational pull of old patterns runs deep. The mind that has spent years focused on worry does not easily shift to trust. The attention that has been trained on scarcity does not immediately recognize abundance, but with patient persistence, you can retrain these fundamental habits of perception. Start where you are, with what you have, in this present moment. Notice where your attention naturally flows throughout the day. Observe without judgment, simply becoming aware of your current patterns. Do you focus on what went wrong or what went right? Do you notice what people do that annoys you or what they do that supports you? Do you dwell on past mistakes or present opportunities? This awareness creates the foundation for conscious selection. Once you see clearly how you currently use your attention, you can begin directing it more deliberately. Choose one area of your life where you want to experience greater fulfillment. Then commit to noticing everything in that domain that already works, already serves you, already contains the seeds of what you desire. What would become possible if you spent the next 30 days training your attention like a master gardener trains his eye? The transformation happens gradually, then suddenly. Days of disciplined focus accumulate into weeks of shifted perception. Weeks of new awareness crystallize into months of different experience. You begin attracting different people, noticing different opportunities, and responding to challenges with different energy. The external world has not changed, but your relationship with it has been revolutionized through the simple practice of selective attention. You discover that happiness is not the result of perfect circumstances, but the natural byproduct of disciplined focus. Success is not the absence of problems, but the presence of solution-oriented thinking. Love is not the elimination of differences, but the choice to attend to connection rather than separation. The master gardener sees his flourishing garden, not because problems do not exist in his domain, but because he has trained himself to notice what supports growth rather than what threatens it. He tends what he focuses upon, and what he tends flourishes under his care. What garden of experience will you choose to cultivate through the ancient art of selective attention? 15. The power of inner authority. You are living in a world that constantly seeks to tell you who you are, what you should want, and how you should behave. Yet within you lies an authority more powerful than any external voice, the quiet sovereignty of your own disciplined consciousness. Most people surrender this inner authority without realizing it. They wake each morning and immediately check what others think, what others expect, what others demand. They live as subjects in a kingdom ruled by the opinions, moods, and agendas of everyone except themselves. This is the conditioned consciousness, forever seeking permission, validation, and direction from sources outside its own wisdom. The awakened consciousness operates differently. It recognizes that true power flows from within, through the cultivation of inner authority. This authority is not arrogance or defiance. It is the calm certainty that comes from knowing yourself so deeply that external circumstances cannot shake your foundation. What would change in your life if you stopped asking the world for permission to be yourself? Consider the mighty oak that stands in the forest. No other tree tells it how tall to grow or which direction to extend its branches. The oak follows its own nature, draws nourishment from its own roots, and reaches toward light according to its own design. It does not grow to please the pine, nor does it shrink to accommodate the birch. The oak's strength comes from this unwavering commitment to its own authentic expression. You too possess this same capacity for authentic self-governance. Inner authority is not something you must earn or achieve. It is something you must remember and reclaim. It has been yours from the beginning, waiting beneath the layers of conditioning, expectation, and borrowed beliefs. The practice of inner authority begins with small acts of self-respect. When you honor your word to yourself, you strengthen this authority. When you choose your responses rather than react automatically, you expand it. When you align your actions with your deepest values, regardless of external pressure, you embody it completely. Inner authority means becoming the author of your own experience. You write the story of your days through conscious choice rather than unconscious habit. You decide which thoughts deserve your attention and which emotions deserve your energy. You choose which relationships nourish your growth and which activities align with your purpose. How often do you betray your own inner knowing to avoid disappointing others? The conditioned consciousness believes that pleasing others is the path to happiness and success. It contorts itself into shapes that feel foreign, speaks words that taste false, and pursues goals that belong to someone else's vision. This consciousness lives in constant anxiety because it can never satisfy the endless demands of a world that changes its mind daily. The awakened consciousness understands that authentic power comes from integrity, the alignment between inner truth and outer expression. When you live from this integrity, you discover something remarkable. The right people are drawn to your authenticity. The right opportunities align with your values, and the right path reveals itself through your consistent choices. This does not mean becoming rigid or closed to input from others. True inner authority is flexible and wise. It listens deeply, considers carefully, and then chooses consciously. It welcomes feedback without becoming dependent on it. It learns from others without losing itself in the process. The cultivation of inner authority requires daily practice. Each moment presents an opportunity to choose from your center rather than your conditioning. When someone asks for your opinion, do you speak your truth or tell them what you think they want to hear? When you face a decision, do you consult your inner wisdom or poll everyone around you? When conflict arises, do you stand in your integrity or collapse into people-pleasing? Like the steady flow of a river carving its path through stone, your consistent choices create the channel through which your life flows. Each choice made from inner authority deepens this channel, making it easier for your authentic self to emerge and express itself in the world. Your inner authority becomes stronger when you stop explaining yourself to people who are not interested in understanding you. It grows when you set boundaries that protect your energy and time. It flourishes when you trust your instincts, even when others question your direction. What dreams have you abandoned because others could not see their value? The world needs your authentic contribution, not your perfect performance. It needs your unique perspective, not your careful conformity. When you live from inner authority, you give others permission to do the same. Your courage to be yourself becomes a beacon for those who have forgotten their own power. Inner authority does not separate you from others. It connects you more genuinely. When you are not constantly managing your image or seeking approval, you become present to what is actually happening. You listen more deeply because you are not planning your next words to impress. You love more freely because you are not keeping score of who owes what to whom. This is the paradox of true authority. The more you claim your own power, the more you empower others. The more you trust yourself, the more trustworthy you become. The more you honor your own nature, the more you honor the nature of all beings. You become someone who knows their own mind and speaks it kindly. You become someone who makes decisions from clarity rather than confusion, from love rather than fear, from wisdom rather than reaction. You become someone who others can count on because you have learned to count on yourself. The journey to inner authority is not always comfortable. There will be moments when standing in your truth feels lonely, when choosing your path means disappointing others, when honoring your values requires courage you are not sure you possess. In these moments, remember that you are not seeking to be different. You are seeking to be authentic. You are not rebelling against the world. You are returning to yourself. Your inner authority is not a destination, but a practice. Each day offers new opportunities to choose from your center, to speak from your truth, to act from your integrity. Each choice builds upon the last, creating a life that belongs unmistakably to you. When you live from inner authority, you become a force of nature in human form, directed by your own compass, powered by your own energy, guided by your own wisdom. This is not selfishness, but service. For the world desperately needs people who know who they are and are not afraid to be it. What would you dare to become if you trusted completely in your own inner authority? 16. The discipline of sacred boundaries. You stand at the crossroads of every relationship, every opportunity, every demand upon your time and energy. At this intersection, one question determines whether you move toward your highest aspirations or drift into the endless current of other people's agendas. What deserves access to your inner sanctuary? The undisciplined mind believes that saying yes to everything demonstrates generosity and opens doors to abundance. The disciplined mind understands that without sacred boundaries, you become a house with no walls, exposed to every storm, invaded by every passerby, offering no shelter to what matters most. Consider the ancient oak that has weathered centuries of seasons. It does not extend its branches toward every passing breeze or send its roots chasing after every distant stream. Instead, it draws clear boundaries around what nourishes its growth and what depletes its strength. The oak gives generously from its abundance, shade to travelers, acorns to wildlife, oxygen to all, but never at the expense of its own deep-rootedness. You are like that oak, designed to give magnificently from a place of centered strength. When you establish boundaries that protect your core values, your creative energy, and your deepest commitments, you create the conditions for authentic abundance. When you abandon these boundaries in the name of pleasing others or chasing every opportunity, you scatter your power across 1,000 directions and arrive nowhere with purpose. What areas of your life feel chaotic or draining because you have failed to establish clear boundaries? The conditioned consciousness mistakes boundaries for selfishness. It fears that saying no will close doors, disappoint others, or reveal some inadequacy. This consciousness operates from scarcity, believing that every opportunity missed is gone forever, and every person disappointed is a relationship destroyed. It lives in constant reaction to external demands, pulled between guilt and resentment, never quite belonging to itself. The awakened consciousness recognizes boundaries as the foundation of all meaningful service. It understands that when you know clearly what you stand for, what you will accept, and what you will not tolerate, you can engage with others from a place of authentic choice rather than unconscious reaction. This consciousness operates from abundance, knowing that the right opportunities will align with your true path when you stop chasing the wrong ones. When you establish sacred boundaries, you are not building walls to keep life out. You are creating a temple that honors what is most valuable within you. This temple becomes the source from which you offer your greatest gifts to the world. The ancient Stoics understood that external circumstances would constantly test the integrity of their inner philosophy. They did not retreat from engagement with the world, but they entered that engagement with clear principles about what they would and would not allow to disturb their peace. They knew that without such boundaries, even the noblest intentions would be scattered by the winds of other people's emotions, expectations, and emergencies. Think of the river that carves the deepest canyons. It does not try to flow in every direction at once or accommodate every obstacle by changing course. Instead, it maintains steady pressure within clearly defined banks, and through this focused power, it transforms the landscape itself. The river's boundaries are not limitations. They are the very source of its transformative strength. Your boundaries work the same way. When you consistently honor your core values, protect your creative time, and refuse to accept treatment that diminishes your dignity, you develop the steady pressure needed to carve your own unique path through life's challenges. This discipline requires daily practice. Each time someone asks for your time, energy, or attention, you face a moment of choice. Will you respond from your centered wisdom or from your conditioned need to please? Will you honor what truly serves your highest purpose or scatter your energy among obligations that leave you empty? How does it feel in your body when you say yes to something that contradicts your deeper knowing? The practice begins with recognizing that you teach people how to treat you through what you accept. If you consistently accommodate disrespect, last-minute demands, or energy-draining interactions, you are unconsciously training others to see these behaviors as acceptable. If you calmly and consistently maintain standards that honor your well-being and your purpose, you invite others into more conscious relationship with you. This is not about building rigid walls or becoming cold and distant. The most powerful boundaries are often the softest ones, clear, kind, and unshakable. When you know your own worth and what truly nourishes your growth, you can be infinitely flexible about methods while remaining absolutely committed to your core values. The awakened consciousness does not explain, justify, or apologize for healthy boundaries. It simply maintains them with the quiet confidence of someone who knows their own value. When you operate from this place, others sense your self-respect and naturally rise to meet the standard you have set. Your relationships transform when you stop trying to control how others respond to your boundaries and focus instead on maintaining them with loving consistency. Some people will challenge these new limits, testing to see if you really mean what you say. Others will respect them immediately, grateful to finally know where they stand with you. The most important boundary is often the one you must set with your own thoughts and emotions. The undisciplined mind allows every fear, worry, and judgment to take up residence in consciousness, creating internal chaos that makes external boundaries impossible to maintain. The disciplined mind chooses which thoughts deserve attention and which emotions warrant action. What would become possible in your life if you fiercely protected your mental and emotional energy? You become someone who attracts authentic relationships when you stop accepting superficial ones. You become someone who receives respect when you consistently offer it to yourself. You become someone who creates meaningful work when you refuse to scatter your talents among pursuits that drain rather than energize you. The practice of sacred boundaries is ultimately a practice of sacred self-respect. It acknowledges that you are not infinitely expandable, that your time and energy are precious resources, and that how you invest these resources determines the quality of your entire existence. As you strengthen this discipline, notice how your capacity for genuine generosity increases. When you give from overflow rather than emptiness, when you serve from choice rather than obligation, your contributions carry a different quality of energy. Others feel the difference between gifts offered from abundance and sacrifices extracted from depletion. If you truly believe that your well-being and your purpose were sacred, what boundaries would you establish today to protect them? 17. The ultimate test. When everything falls apart, the ocean appears calm from the shore, but beneath its surface, powerful currents move in patterns ancient and purposeful. What looks like chaos to the untrained eye reveals itself as perfect order to those who understand the deeper rhythms. Your life operates by the same principle, especially when everything seems to be falling apart. You have learned to discipline your thoughts in quiet moments. You have practiced controlling your reactions when faced with minor irritations. You have built habits that serve your highest vision. But all of this preparation leads to one ultimate test: maintaining your inner fortress when the external world crumbles around you. This is where most people abandon everything they have learned. This is where the conditioned mind screams loudest, demanding that you return to old patterns of panic, blame, and despair. This is also where you discover what you are truly made of. When crisis strikes, the undisciplined mind immediately searches for someone or something to blame. It creates elaborate stories about how unfair life has become. It demands immediate relief from discomfort and will sacrifice long-term peace for short-term escape. The conditioned consciousness views disruption as evidence that the universe is working against it. But you are different now. You understand that disruption often signals transformation and progress. You recognize that external chaos cannot touch your inner peace unless you grant it permission. You know that every challenge contains within it the seeds of your next level of growth. What does it mean to remain disciplined when your world shakes? It means you continue to choose your responses rather than react automatically. It means you maintain your daily practices even when they seem pointless. It means you trust the process even when you cannot see the outcome. Consider how the ocean responds to storms. The surface may rage with tremendous waves, but far below, in the depths, all remains still. The ocean does not fight the storm or try to prevent it. It simply maintains its essential nature while allowing the temporary turbulence to pass. This is your model for navigating life's inevitable upheavals. The disciplined mind during crisis asks different questions than the panicked mind. Where others ask, "Why is this happening to me?" You ask, "What is this here to teach me?" Where others demand, "How can I make this stop?" You inquire, "How can I grow through this experience?" Where others cry, "This isn't fair," you wonder, "What strength am I developing that I didn't know I possessed?" These questions shift everything. They transform you from victim to student, from helpless observer to active participant in your own evolution. They remind you that you always have a choice in how you interpret and respond to circumstances, regardless of how extreme those circumstances may appear. Your greatest tests often arrive disguised as your worst nightmares: the loss of a relationship you thought you needed, the collapse of a business you built with love, the diagnosis that changes everything, the betrayal that shatters your trust. In these moments, your true character emerges not in spite of the difficulty, but because of it. The awakened consciousness recognizes these moments as accelerated learning opportunities. It understands that comfort rarely produces growth, and that your greatest breakthroughs often come disguised as breakdowns. It maintains perspective by remembering that this too shall pass, and that your response to adversity shapes your future more than the adversity itself. You become unshakable not by avoiding life's storms, but by learning to remain centered within them. You develop this capacity gradually, through countless small choices to respond rather than react, to trust rather than panic, to learn rather than blame. Each time you choose discipline over impulse during minor difficulties, you build strength for the major ones. The ultimate paradox of self-discipline during crisis is that the less you struggle against what is happening, the more power you have to influence what happens next. When you stop wasting energy fighting reality, you free up enormous resources for creating new possibilities. When you cease demanding that circumstances be different, you can clearly see the opportunities hidden within current conditions. This does not mean becoming passive or accepting injustice. It means responding from a place of centered strength rather than reactive fear. It means taking inspired action rather than frantic action. It means solving problems from the same level of consciousness that created them. Your daily disciplines prepare you for these moments in ways you may not recognize until you are in the midst of them. The meditation practice that seemed routine suddenly provides an anchor of peace in chaotic times. The habit of questioning your thoughts becomes essential when fear tries to hijack your imagination. The practice of gratitude transforms into a lifeline when loss threatens to overwhelm you. Every person you admire has faced moments when everything seemed to fall apart. What separated them from those who remained defeated was not the absence of fear or doubt, but their commitment to maintain their inner discipline regardless of outer circumstances. They understood that their response to crisis would determine whether they emerged stronger or weaker, wiser or more bitter, expanded or contracted. You are being prepared for such moments every day through the small challenges that test your resolve. The colleague who frustrates you is training you for future tests of patience. The financial pressure you feel is developing your capacity to remain calm under greater pressure. The relationship conflicts you navigate are building skills you will need for more significant interpersonal challenges. When your ultimate test arrives, you will recognize it not as your end, but as your beginning. You will understand that everything you have experienced has prepared you for this moment. You will trust that your inner resources are more than sufficient for whatever you face, because you have spent years developing and strengthening them. The question is not whether challenges will come, but whether you will be ready when they do. Will you maintain your center when the ground shakes beneath you? 18. The Master's Return. You stand at the completion of a journey that began the moment you chose to reclaim what was always yours. The ancient Stoics understood a truth that modern seekers often overlook. Mastery is not a destination you arrive at, but a way of being you embody each day. Think of the master craftsman who returns to his workshop after decades of practice. His hands move with effortless precision, not because the work has become easy, but because he has become one with his craft. The wood responds to his touch. The tools feel like extensions of his being, and each creation flows from a deep well of accumulated wisdom. Yet, each morning, he still approaches his bench with the same reverence he held as an apprentice. This is who you are becoming. You are the master returning to the workshop of your own consciousness, equipped not with theories about discipline, but with the lived experience of choosing your responses moment by moment. What does it mean to live as someone who has remembered their true nature? The conditioned mind believes that discipline is a burden to be carried, a weight that grows heavier with time. It sees self-mastery as restriction, limitation, the endless denial of impulses and desires. This consciousness lives in constant tension between what it wants and what it thinks it should do. The awakened consciousness recognizes discipline as freedom itself. You understand that every act of conscious choice expands your capacity to create the life you truly desire. You see through the illusion that your impulses and emotions define you, and you rest in the deeper truth of your power to choose. In this state, discipline becomes as natural as breathing. You do not force yourself to make wise choices any more than you force yourself to love what you cherish. The choices flow from who you have become, not from who you think you should be. Consider how the ocean moves. Its vast depths remain undisturbed regardless of what storms rage across its surface. The deepest currents flow with ancient purpose, unaffected by the temporary turbulence above. This is the consciousness you now embody. Your emotions, impulses, and reactions are like weather patterns across your awareness, but they do not determine your direction. When desire arises, you feel it fully without being enslaved by it. When fear appears, you acknowledge its presence without allowing it to dictate your choices. When anger emerges, you understand its message without becoming its instrument. You have learned the difference between experiencing your humanity and being imprisoned by it. How does this mastery express itself in the ordinary moments of your days? You wake not to escape your dreams, but to create them. You speak not to fill silence, but to share truth. You work not to avoid poverty, but to contribute value. You love not to avoid loneliness, but to express the fullness within you. Every action springs from abundance rather than lack, from choice rather than compulsion. The people around you begin to notice something different, though they may not be able to name what they observe. There is a quality of presence about you, a centeredness that remains constant whether you are facing triumph or challenge. You have become someone who can be counted on to respond rather than react, to create rather than consume, to give rather than take. This transformation touches every area of your existence. In your relationships, you love without attachment to outcome. In your work, you serve without need for recognition. In your challenges, you grow without resistance to difficulty. You have discovered what the Stoics knew, that your happiness depends not on what happens to you, but on how consciously you meet what happens. Yet mastery brings with it a profound responsibility. You can no longer pretend that you are victim to your circumstances. You cannot claim ignorance of your power to choose. You have awakened to the truth that you are the author of your experience. And with this knowing comes the obligation to write your story consciously. The master craftsman does not complete one masterpiece and declare his work finished. Each day brings new wood to shape, new challenges to meet, new beauty to create. Similarly, Your mastery of self-discipline is not an achievement to be celebrated and forgotten, but a way of being to be lived moment by moment, choice by choice, day by day. What legacy are you creating through the daily practice of conscious choice? Your discipline has become a gift not only to yourself, but to everyone whose life you touch. In a world filled with people living unconsciously, reacting automatically, and blaming externally, you stand as proof that another way is possible. Your very presence gives others permission to remember their own power. You have learned that true strength lies not in the absence of challenge, but in the quality of your response to it. You understand that real freedom comes not from getting what you want, but from choosing who you become. You know that lasting fulfillment emerges not from external achievement, but from internal alignment. The ancient practice you have reclaimed was never really forgotten. It lived within you all along, waiting for the moment when you would choose to remember. Every Stoic philosopher who walked before you, every master who achieved true self-governance, every awakened being who transcended reactive living, has been calling you home to this truth. You are no longer someone who practices discipline. You are someone who embodies it. You are no longer someone who seeks mastery. You are someone who lives it. You are no longer someone who hopes for freedom. You are someone who expresses it. The workshop of your consciousness now stands ready for whatever challenges and opportunities tomorrow may bring. Your tools are sharp, your skills are honed, and your purpose is clear. You have become the master of your own experience. What will you create with the profound power you now know yourself to possess?